This week, Portland, Oregon has been host to the 59th convention of the American Association of University Women. In Channel 8 studios for this pre-recorded program are three past presidents and the current president of the AAUW. To introduce them and moderate our discussion on The Educated Woman on Her Own is KGW-TV Director of Programming, Tom Dargan.
Hello. Let's get to the business of introducing our very distinguished guests, people of considerable accomplishment whom I'm sure you will enjoy listening to for the next half hour as we take on some fairly weighty topics, and I hope in an interesting style for you. First of all, may I introduce the present president of the American Association of University Women and the AAUW Educational Foundation, Dr. Blanche Dow. Dr. Dow is also president of Cottey College, Nevada, Missouri. She's chairman of the Missouri Commission on the Status of Women and a member and presidential appointee to the National Citizens Committee for Community Relations. Next, I'd like to have you meet Dr. Anna Hawks, who was former president of AAUW and AAUW Educational Foundation, vice president, United States Commission for UNESCO, and former dean of students at Mills College. Next to her, Dr. Susan Riley, also a former president, as indeed all the rest of our members are, of the AAUW, professor of English and dean of the Graduate School of George Peabody College for Teachers. In July of last year, Dr. Riley toured West Germany at the invitation of the German government to observe results of United States aid in that country. And last but not least, Dr. Hottel, who was also former president of the AAUW, former dean of women at the University of Pennsylvania, and has been United States representative to the United Nations Social Commission, and I think at the time of our recording we have a bit of news as the incoming president of the International Federation of University Women. And congratulations to you, Dr. Hottel. Before we begin with our topic, which you were able to spy at the beginning of our program, I would like to ask Dr. Dow about the AAUW. I note that all of us, all of you here, are educators. Is that the makeup of AAUW?
Oh, no, indeed. There are many educators in the AAUW, of course. But in this body of more than 165,000 women, all of whom at least have started on education to the extent of 4 years of college, you have I should say, the greatest proportion of them are women who are volunteers in their participation in the program, and they are not professional women in the field of education. We have many women in medicine, in science, in public positions of various kinds.
As we noted in an earlier discussion which we had prior to beginning this program, that it has been 45 years since 1920 since women were granted the right to vote in the United States of America. As you can tell by the credentials of our participants, these ladies, and certainly a great many others, have come a very, very long way in the United States, in our social and educational, political, and economic system. As part of the purpose of the AAUW and the nature of our topic today, is there much yet to be done in terms of acceptance, if you will, or equal status or first-class citizenship for American women? Who would like to take that on? Dr. Riley?
Yes. That title which you've given us, to speak to or to speak from, bothers me just a little bit, because of course no person is entirely on his own. He's always associated with social forces, and he is influenced by these social forces, and there's a lot about society today which would determine woman's achievement, just as there would be about man. Now let me speak of one. Let me just say one thing and then another thing, and perhaps that'll get us into developing what you're saying. Women have had open to them practically all the doors. I see very little discrimination against the female sex now. And what there is doesn't bother me. It's more ludicrous than it is convincing. But there are certain other factors which are important. One is that we ourselves still have the mentality of the subordinate.
In terms of attitude.
That's right. That we ourselves have a reluctance to take full advantage of the opportunities. And when we are working under men, we assume the mentality of a subordinate, which phrase is not mine. I think it's Margaret Mead's, to be exact. So that is one example of what I mean by saying that no one can be entirely on his own. There are attitudes as well as conditions which influence.
Well, I would agree with you that no one is entirely on his own, but I don't agree with you that we assume the attitude of a subordinate. I think that many women who are in faculty positions, administrative positions, in business, in law, in medicine, and so on, are the equal of their male counterparts and are accepted as such. I still think there is some discrimination against women. That women find it difficult to get high administrative posts, but when they do, I don't feel that they take a subordinate position.
Well, I'm the only one smoking a pipe. Dr. Hottel?
Well, maybe we're paying more attention to the smoking aspect here. I was thinking, too, that there's another factor we have to consider, that a great many more of our educated women are married today than there were, let's say, at the time 40-some years ago, which we were talking about. In addition to which, more women are going on to the universities and colleges and having a broader education and are being trained to do specific things that would be sold in the marketplace, in a sense. I mean, they have vocational, professional skills, and an increasing number are carrying both roles of responsibilities in the home as well as responsibilities in professional life. And this means several things. It may mean that a woman who takes both of her jobs very seriously, without the physical stamina, without the ability for organization, may not be able to devote as much time to her professional development and advancement as a woman who is not married. On the other hand, I think we're finding a good many community facilities that we're thinking about now that will help this woman in terms of proper care for her children, in terms of the people who come into the home and clean it for you while you're out, in terms of all the cooking facilities. And I don't mean to talk about all these gadgets meaning no work at all, because sometimes you have to repair them and they take more work than otherwise. But these factors, I think, are influencing the women today a great deal.
I don't want us to go on an oblique line, but speaking to Dr. Riley's point, is some of the problem that a woman fears risking her femininity in terms of her competitive role, or on her own, or competing, so to speak, with males for equal position? Is this a factor that you find when you're having your informal or formal discussions?
No, I wouldn't think so.
No, I think not. By the time you have devoted your life to becoming rather good in some area, you think of yourself as a person with certain accomplishments, and not the sex factor is not the determining
A
factor.
person first.
Yes, that's quite true.
I think from the standpoint of younger girls in the colleges and universities who may not at that point have quite the professional motivation that an older person has, this could enter into the picture a bit.
Oh, I think so, too.
I think it does enter into the picture. The young woman who is just out of college, who marries either before or then, too often interrupts her own continuing formal education in getting ready for a profession or vocation in order to earn money to help her young husband pursue his education. I have yet to see an instance in which the young man interrupts his education to complete the education of his wife. And many times you have a superior woman sacrificing her continuing education to finish up for an inferior man.
Well, you get
I
into
do know
I
one
think
case
that's
where
a
a man
great
did
waste.
that.
You know one case.
Yeah, one case.
Well, one in a million.
Yes.
Of course, I think we get into familial structures and all
Yes,
kinds of emotional and other factors. That, you mentioned this interrupted education, Dr. Dow. Now, I understand that one of the activities of AAUW is to provide a fund for furthering the education of the woman who is more mature, that is not just getting out of school, but is in her 30s, 40s, and so forth. Is that
whose education has been interrupted
Yes,
by family cares? Yes, through the Educational Foundation of the AAUW.
You're also president of that.
Yes,
Right?
that's automatic, Alice.
I see.
The-
Friends benefit.
That's right. If you can call it a benefit.
I was wondering.
You can call it that.
Presidency a benefit. But this is the third and last year of a project in the continuing education of women, which has been financed for us by a Rockefeller grant,
I see.
in which we've studied the problem of continuing education of women from 4 angles. Are there women at this moment in their lives, when their children are beyond babyhood, who are eager to get back into the professional training, into the interrupted research? Are there institutions who will welcome them back? Can they hold their own with the young student? Can they be placed in positions when they're through? And we are enormously pleased by the result of this project. Now, we hope that some way may be found by which it may be instituted in various parts of the country. This has been carried on in 13 southern states for the last 2 years, and now we're coming to the end of this.
I think the interesting thing, too, about that project is that the colleges were a little loath in the beginning to take these older women, but they have proved themselves so able and have carried on their work so well that the colleges now are more than willing to accept them.
Mr. Doggan, may
Yes,
I speak of
Dr.
something
Riley.
else which the AUW is doing, which touches on this marriage factor? We have a very excellent program of fellowships, general fellowships for American women and for international women also. During this current year, we have made 92 awards, totaling about $289,000 in stipends, all of which comes as the result of the voluntary support of the membership. And we have a permanent endowment which has a book value of over $3 million. And the income from that supports many of these. I am chairman of the Committee on the Fellowships to American Women. We had 270 applications this spring, and it was amazing how many of those women were married. Now, back in my day, it was largely a choice between career or marrying. And now the young girls have both. Many of these applicants are in their late 20s. By the way, the fellowships go only to superior women who have either completed their doctor's degree or within 1 year of it. That's what makes it such a unique program. It does not compete with what civic clubs would do, for instance, in sending a girl to college for her freshman year. It's the top level only. But it has been interesting to see, as the years went by, how more and more of the women scholars of this country are successfully combining a happy, well-adjusted, delightful married life with the long hours necessary to achieve prestige as a scholar in one's field.
You know, you may find this interesting, though probably you've run across it a great deal. I know of 2 instances, friends, where married or were married to men during World War II or shortly thereafter. Men went to school under GI Bill. The girls' educations were interrupted to help him to raise children and so forth. Now, this 20 years has elapsed. Children are pretty much raised. And in 2 instances, I know of women who have gone back and gotten their teaching certificates and degrees, some, you know, starting 18, 17 years after this.
I think we may very well have to think in terms more generally of the kind of an educational program at the university level which will make it possible for women to do this. We may very well have to think more specifically about changes in traditional educational requirements, for instance, of going so many years to an institution and having to go your last year to an institution to get your degree, that with the mobility of the population in this country and with these earlier marriages, it seems to me that educational institutions will have to give much more attention to taking a woman where she is, giving her the opportunities to go on and complete her degree if she wants to, with much less prejudice. There are a number of institutions doing this now, but frequently I come upon a state that will say, well, would you tell us more about the continuing educational programs? We haven't even thought about it in this university.
Althea, why not put that in a larger context than the woman's situation? It's tied in with adult education, isn't it? The same thing would be true of a man whose early training was interrupted by economic necessity or service in the army or something of the kind. I think our graduate schools are going to have to think seriously about a program which is geared to the adult, regardless of whether it's man or woman.
Does it occur to you that this eagerness and ability of the woman to take up her education again after a 20-year period says something about the continuing education of the man during that period?
Yes, I think it does, because in a couple of these instances, these were men who got advanced degrees, and I think that the wife probably felt that she had somehow fallen a little bit behind, and that was part of the motivation.
Perhaps he began to see that it was important for her to do it too.
And one of the interesting things about our college faculty program is the cooperation that these women have received from their husbands.
Well, you couldn't do it unless you had a cooperating
to go back to college.
In fact, we asked for a letter of cooperation.
And how many times the children are excited about mother going back to college.
That's true.
It's been a very interesting phenomenon, I think, that particular part of it.
The thing that Drs. Riley and Hottel were speaking to in terms of the schools adjusting to this new requirement for men and women for continuing education, I've noticed some of the people here at this television station are taking courses at night or the day, depending upon their shift. And that many of the requirements toward a degree, they can take everything by correspondence or extension, except at certain 1 quarter or 2 or a period of time as residence is required and so forth, which mitigates, they really can't do it. Now, is this the kind of thing AAUW is trying to change in some...
Well, I don't know. No. We would hope that the business concern, for instance, which employs the man, would give him leave of absence with pay to increase his value to the organization. No, I think we would say that a degree shouldn't be taken in little bits and pieces. There must be more, a longer period of concentration. Wouldn't you agree?
There's something very special that comes, really, in a relationship of being on a university campus. Pitting your mind against those of faculty and students, and you're just not talking to yourself all the time about what you're studying. It's a meeting of minds and an amalgamation of knowledge that's important.
Well, I certainly agree with that, but I do think that the mobility of our country has got to be taken into consideration, and the fact that a student, man or woman, may have been at 2 universities, and his credits are perfectly acceptable, or her credits are perfectly acceptable at University X, but she doesn't need a whole year to finish. Now, the university and the college has got to come to adjust to the fact that they not necessarily have to have the last full year in residence at that institution.
We were talking about a quarter term, weren't we?
Yes,
before,
something like that.
Where someone who was taking a correspondence course might be required to go to a university for 1 quarter.
And the universities have got to adjust to that, and I think they've got to come to the point that they no longer consider an AB degree a 4-year package deal between the years of 18 and 22.
And we have to consider that when we have an AB degree or a PhD or anything else beyond that which may be developed, that isn't enough. You can't just sit on your laurels.
No.
for 25 or 30 years, you have to keep on.
That's right.
With your field. I think this is so evident in the scientific fields that you're outmoded in no time at all, and I think certainly it's coming in the social studies.
So this emphasis on adult education is not for the uneducated. It's for people who realize they must continue to keep educated, because there's no standing still in the world today.
You know, it's rare that we have a group with your credentials on a given panel, and with your permission, I'd like to sort of ungenderize this discussion and ask you what your opinion is of the current level of higher education. We've all been hearing about the student revolt. We're familiar with the unhappiness on the Berkeley campus, questions of size, the publish or perish, all of the various aspects of higher education. And so, if you will, if you don't mind this 180 degrees, would you like to speak to this current level of higher education in the United States, how you regard it? Dr. Dow?
I still think it's pretty good. There are abuses, of course, and I think we have a great tendency to explain, to cite as the cause of most of the things that we think have lowered the quality of the experience in higher education and so forth, as due to the fact that we have great masses of students and that there has been a loss of a prized personal relationship between professor and student. I'm inclined to think that that's an exaggerated emphasis on that one thing, because I believe that the quality of the instructor and the quality of the student being determined, the fitness of the student to be following a particular program in education, that these things come in. There are far too many people in places where they don't belong.
Students or faculty?
Students, both. We have, we need more faculty all the time. We need more teachers all the time. But I'm not sure that, by and large, the people who are coming out from their training into the teaching profession are ready to do it. I'm not talking in terms of training here. I'm talking in terms of the quality of people that they are.
Any additional? Dr. Hottel?
Very interesting.
Dr. Riley?
Well, I think all of us want to talk to this. This question of being polite and refraining just for a minute or two. So let me start off. I would heartily support that. I have great faith in the American system of higher education. I'd be no Cassandra to wail the fall of Troy. Of course, we don't like it just as it is, but no generation has ever liked its school system as it is. It cannot stay as it is, because education is the vehicle of the society of the time, and it must change and adapt as society itself changes and adapts. So that the criticism which is being heaped upon the system of education today is no more than has been heaped upon it in the past and other periods. I think the young people in college are extraordinarily good now. They study, they know, they have a breadth of knowledge and a considerable degree of understanding, which to me is an improvement over what they have had in the past, and I've taught generations of them. Before I went into this administrative post, I was professor of English, so that I've had pretty close contacts with the minds of students, and I admire the college youth of today. I want to pick up one other thing that Dr. Dow said, and that is, unfortunately, we do not have the degree of dedication to teaching which we've had in previous faculties. One reason for it is that the young men, young women who are coming out of universities now with their doctor's degrees have been subsidized. It's been rather easy for them. They have spent 5 years on fellowships of one kind or another, when we in our day spent many, many years with no subsidy at all. The result is that they know only one type of the academic picture, largely the research type. So what they want to do, the prestige element now among the young PhDs, is a job which will give them a seminar, with some 8 or 10 bright young people who are interested in the same thing that they're interested in, and then a chance to do research in their chosen field. But I've interviewed a good many of them during this year in building up our own staff, and some of those young people look frightened when I talk about freshmen. That's right. They don't know what to do, to go before a group of freshmen who don't want to learn and are rather cynical about what you want them to learn, and to go into that fascinating, and there is nothing more fascinating, that fascinating art of opening up the minds of the young people to the new world.
Well, I suspected that you probably would respond in that way, Dr. Riley. It was very succinctly and interestingly said. In the few minutes, and actually literally few, that we have remaining, I'd like to throw one thing out on the table. Are enough women seeking higher education that should be, or getting into fields where they're, in this country, notably shy? I'm thinking of dentistry, I'm thinking of medicine and so forth, and if not, what is AAUW trying to do about it, to inspire more women to pursue higher education?
Well, certainly, while the number of young women going on to undergraduate work has been raised, the proportion is not so much higher. And when it gets to the graduate level, unfortunately, beyond the master's degree, it's declining. And this, I think, is unfortunate.
Is there anything, this part of your program for continuing education, is this about the extent of the effort of this organization?
Well, you see, one of the things that we do, as Dr. Riley said, is the awarding of these fellowships to encourage young women to continue their scholarly interests.
Let me throw part of I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. I just was going to say that if you looked at the scholarships offered, the fellowships offered around this country, with the possible exception of those offered by the National Science Foundation, the large majority of them go to men and not to women. Women are not awarded the fellowships, the Ford Foundation fellowships, for instance, to teachers now in the teaching profession, to make them better teachers or to help them to become better teachers. The number of women is
Is this because the women are not seeking it? We only have a few seconds.
Well, some of it is perhaps that they're not seeking it, but some of it is that they're not appointed.
I see.
Now, I don't know just why that is. I hope that these people who have the responsibility of appointing these fellows do it on the basis of qualifications. If that's so, then the women had better get better qualifications.
I think that one thing that enters into the situation here is here to stay, and that is early marriage. And that having finished for a baccalaureate degree, a girl is married and for the time being is quite willing to postpone any future achievements.
All right, well, on that happy and fruitful note, we will have to discontinue our conversation, and thank you very much for being with us.
This special program, presented in conjunction with the 59th General Meeting of the American Association of University Women, was produced by Gloria Chandler and directed by Tom Craven.